Hello everyone, my name is Sagar Paranjape and welcome to the third part of the Camera Raw tutorial. Today we are going to be talking about the right side panels of the Camera Raw feature. If you haven't watched the first two videos, please do. I'll be putting up a link on the screen right now. If you haven't watched them, please go ahead and watch them first. Right now we are on our first tab right here, the first panel. The first panel is the basics panel where you can do basic adjustments to your image, just like exposure, contrast, highlights, temperature. You can give it a tint from green to purple, shadows, and it is fairly obvious, fairly self-explanatory that if you move this slider to the left, it is going to reduce whatever, let's say, exposure. So if I move my slider to the left, it's going to reduce the exposure of the image. If I move it to the, oops, my bad. If I move it to the right, it's going to increase the exposure of the image. Right. So these things are quite easy and self-explanatory. You can one thing that is actually quite important for all these panels on the right is that there is no one way to adjust images using that. So you have to do trial and error. You have to keep on experimenting for different images to get the best results. So one thing that I wanted to talk about apart from these sliders is the profile drop down menu that you see right here. So if I click on, right now it's on Adobe Color. If I click on it, it's going to give me a few options. For example, Adobe Color, Landscape, Portrait, Standard, Vivid, and Monochrome. So monochrome will turn it into a black and white image. But whatever you're shooting, if this was a landscape image, I would be on landscape. Accordingly, portrait is for portraits. And the other two are just on you. So if you want a more vivid lighting, I'll click on vivid and it will kind of boost the saturation and colors of the image. So that is the first panel that we have right here, which is the basics panel. And now we will move on to the next panel. Now I've done a few adjustments right here to correct my image in a certain way that I like. So now we are going to be moving on to the next panel, which is our tone curve panel. So it has two parts, which is parametric and point. So parametric curve is more of, again, it is based on these sliders of highlights, lights, darks, and shadows, and obviously these sliders govern how much, like, what would you like to give your preference to. Like if you'd like to reduce highlights, you'll move this to the left. If you like to increase highlights, you'll move this to the right. And this works similarly for all the other values that we have right here. But point curve is more, I would say, experimental, because you have to place a point on the given line right here. So this line is what we will use to make our adjustments. So before I say anything, the way to put this is that this part is the shadows, our middle portion will be the mid-tones, and this part is a highlight. If you move the line above, it's going to increase the exposure. If you move this down, it's going to decrease the exposure. So, and one really good way to bring about contrast in images using this uh, feature is that you can just do an S curve. So if you don't know what an S curve is, I'll just show you pretty quickly. I'm going to place one point right in the middle where this line intersects both the axes. I'm going to put a pointer roughly in the middle. So now on the top, I think it's not in the middle, but it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to move this top part a little bit above. Not a lot, just a little bit. And you see it is already bent here. And I'm going to move this slightly more, slightly below the initial line. So this forms a slight curve, or as it is called, an S curve. Right now it is not looking that well, but this is how you can do an S-curve and experiment with your images. It will definitely look better on certain different images. And also, this is a graph of a whole RGB values. You can see in the channels right here, you can see the RGB. If you want to manipulate singular colors, so let's say red, green and blue, you can do them by clicking on the given color. So now this is all about the tone curve. Now we'll be moving on to the next panel. I did not apply the S-curve because it was looking too drastic of a change for my liking. If you like to do it, you may go ahead. The next panel that we are on is called the details panel, in which you look at noise and sharpening. So sharpening is basically, my personal opinion is, do not do sharpening from here. I would like you all to do sharpening from inside the actual filter section of Photoshop window. Here you're just going to be doing a very overall sharpening, which will in case sharpen these blurred patches as well. So right now it is on default. I haven't changed it at all, so it applies this certain amount of sharpening every time I go through Camera Raw. As well as this noise reduction, I do not prefer you doing it from here because again it will make your image softer. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I increase noise reduction, it's going to look like a painting. I obviously did it to an extreme just to show you that it is going to soften your image. A little bit of noise reduction won't hurt, but again, this image doesn't really need any. If it's a low light image, I would suggest doing a slight bit, but plugins for Photoshop would work way better than this. Definitely. So you can again sharpen from here. Let's do a full sharpen. You see the whole image indiscriminately has been sharpened, which I personally don't find quite appealing or a good way to edit your images. So again, it's quite self-explanatory. You can just go ahead and move these values ahead like to left and right and check out what it does to your image. Yeah, that is it for the details panel that we have right here. Now the next panel that we have right here is one of my favorite panels to use from the Camera Raw feature, which is really going to give you that extra effect to kind of grasp the viewer's attention. So this panel is called the HSL Adjustment panel, and if you have watched my earlier videos on Camera Raw, you know what HSL stands for. It is hue, saturation and luminance as given right here. So as you all might be seeing right here, instead of looking at this as a series of bars, if you join these bars end to end, you will find that you end up having a full circle. For example, where red ends is where orange hue starts, where yellow hue bar ends is where green starts. So instead of looking at it as a series of bars, it is more of like a hue circle. So again, I do not use hue normally. If I want to make some surreal editing, I would prefer doing it. For example, it just changes the whole mood, the whole tone of your image. It will definitely give your images some like different looks, but again, you have to experiment to get good results. The next one is saturation, and it is quite straightforward. Again, every color here is given, and you can just play around and increase or decrease the saturation of any given color to get the required results, any result that you'd like. So I'm going to give my grass a little bit more greenery. So let's do a 20. Okay, now luminance is again, you can call it the brightness of these colors. So if I do green, it's going to brighten all the greens in the image. So again, quite self-explanatory. Sorry for the right, whatever. Uh, it's quite self-explanatory. You can just go ahead, experiment with these values, these sliders, and get the required, results. This looks kind of nice. It reduces the exposure and brings your eye to the falcon right here. Now we'll be moving on to the next panel. Our next panel is also a really interesting panel if you are into surreal edits or something new and bold looking. For me as a wildlife photographer, that's not really what I'm looking at, but portraits. If you're any other kind of photography, street maybe, this is very useful. This is a very useful panel. So split toning panel is, you can see highlights and you can see shadows right here. So again, let's give a hue to both of these. So I'm going to give highlights a blue hue, and I'm going to give shadows a yellow hue. Okay, so it's quite far apart on the hue wheel or slider. Now in the middle, now you've given you certain points, certain hue to each shadow and highlight. So I'm going to give it a saturation of, let's say, 20 for each. So 20, 20. Oh, let's give, yeah, let it be. So now I've given these a saturation of 20. So now what is the middle slider? What is this monochrome slider right here? So black and white slider. So this is the balance of the split tone. In the middle, it will give both the highlights and shadows enough, like equal, like coloring or saturation. But if I move it to the left, it is going to go more towards the shadows. It is, see how it turned yellow. See how the image turned yellow, because I've tipped the balance towards the shadows. And now if I take it towards the highlights, it is going to make my image blue, like the hue that was given to the highlights. So this way you can split tone and you can play around. Let's say here, if I were doing slightly a drier winter kind of look, maybe this could look good. So yeah, you can do that. But if you don't like it, you can just double click on the slider and it will come down to the 0 again, which will give you a balance. Now we'll be heading on to the next panel. Our next panel is the lens corrections panel. So you might know this, you might not know this, but as every let's say lens glass, every glass has a refractive index, and it cannot be perfect. So it causes chromatic aberrations, it causes a slight bulge at the ends, for just like you would see at the edges, bending at the edges of like action camera videos or pictures. So it causes certain aberrations or different kind of faults in an image, as one might say. So here you can, with this simple lens correction panel, you can just remove chromatic aberrations with one click. So I click on it and it will remove chromatic aberrations till its best degree. And profile corrections, when I click it, is going to, you couldn't see it, wait, so it's going to correct it. It looks like it got pushed ahead a little bit. Again, you see here it has my camera, all the camera details which are accompanied by this image. So again, I can play around with the distortion, like how much distortion do I want, how much correction do I need, all this. So naturally a vignette will form, so you can see the darkened edges. So if I increase, it will lighten the edges. If I decrease, it will give it another, it will darken the edges more. So this is again more of like, if you want to do it, you can do it. It is not really something you need all the time. So yeah, you can do it if you'd like, and we shall move on to the next panel. Our next panel is the effects panel, and the main effect here is the grain. So the grain is just noise, but you can add grain here. Let's add grain. You can see all this noise that just got added to our image right here. So again, size, you can increase the size of the grain, which will make it look more distorted. Look, this just looks destroyed. This image looks destroyed right now. So the roughness you can increase, which will again increase the roughness. But I do not want green on this image, since why would I? Again, post crop vignetting. Again, this changes the, if you want vignette, it will give you a white one. If you go to the left, it will give you a black one. I do not suggest this unless, like, normally if you're just going to post for Instagram or whatnot. But if you really want this effect, maybe you're going for this effect, then you can definitely do it. You can again change these given values for feathering, roundness, midpoint, highlight, etc. Again, please go ahead and experiment. You never know what effect could work out for your image. Now we'll be moving on to the next panel. 2, 1. The next panel that we see right here is the calibration panel. So our calibration panel is a way to color calibrate our image. We can give our, like, as you can see right here, we can tint our shadows with green or purple, as you might like. And again, then we have red primary, green primary, blue primary calibrations, which are the RGB colors, red, green, and blue. You can change the hue of red, green, and blue, and change the saturation as well. Let's change, so it gives this nice red color. Let's change the hue of green to, let's say, yellow. Oh, this looks nice. No, it does not, sorry. Yeah, and you can play around with the saturation a little bit. Again, completely experimental, do what you'd like. Yeah, that is basically it. The process drop down here is very similar to the basics drop down that we saw, like Adobe Color, Vivid, whatever. You can, again, there are 5 versions. You can try out any one, like try out all 5 of them to look at what is really going on for your image. Again, experimentation is key. Now we'll be moving on to our next panel. Let's go. So this is going to be our last panel of this video, which is our presets panel. So you might have heard about Lightroom presets, maybe LUTs, something like that. So this is similar, but this is just Photoshop default presets. So here we have color, creative, black and white, and then effects like curve, grain, sharpening, and vignetting. So yeah, so you can just go ahead and watch what these do to your image, and play around with them a little bit, see what they do for your image, and use them accordingly if you like them. Here, green, you can give your image a green, light, medium, heavy, and so on and so forth. Again, for the billionth time of this video, experimentation is key. don't be afraid to try any different kind of edits, because you never know what you will find on experimentation. That is all for this video, guys. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, let me know in the comments. If you have any doubts, any suggestions, again, let me know in the comments. I'll put my Twitter and Instagram in the description. You can connect with me there. And more videos to come. Please like and subscribe. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next time.